Good evening and welcome to the Psych Golf Shop. I'm sitting down with Freddy today with his new book, Portals. How are you, darling? You've been busy.
Very. And by the way, while I was watching the intro, I thought, if you change the thing to psychic whiskey distillery, you'd have thousands of people wanting to be on your show.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And it's just one of those like, well, we can go there, but I don't think the host can handle that amount anymore. I've gotten quite light in my gut anymore. So this is your new book out, Portals, and you have a new documentary out, and you've got another one in the works, I understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, though. It's sitting in the gestation process, waiting for something to happen. No, I actually was going to take a sabbatical. I've been very, very busy, and especially during COVID when people were looking for content, and I had the time to sit down and go over, thousands of pages of notes and footage of stuff I filmed around the world. And got very busy. I was like 2 books and 4 documentaries, and then I just finished a 3-part series on Egypt, which just came out, and it's getting great reviews, and I'm actually very happy with it. It's a very unusual and original angle, and it took about 10 years of research.
What's the title of it?
The Hidden Side of Egypt.
Okay, and guys, it's on Gaia. I don't mind pumping Gaia. Go over there, check it out. It's on Gaia. It's The Hidden Sides of Egypt. Grab this book. There's a lot more he's done if you want to delve deeper into it.
Yeah, so and I wanted to sit down and have a quiet
you into this one?
Well, because I had a call from a publisher, and I also swore that I wasn't going to work with a publisher ever again. I now publish my own titles. I was very lucky that my first book was an international bestseller, and still is. So I've got the advantage of creating my own publishing area and making 80% of the proceeds, which is a big difference from 10%. But she contacted me and she said, I got a great idea for a book, and I think you could probably write this in your sleep. And I thought, well, I want to take some time off. Let me pitch you the idea and I'll buy you lunch. And I'm a sucker for free lunches. So I thought, okay. And she was saying, well, there's this thing called portals, which you talk about all the time. And these energetic spots on the face of the world that are everywhere. And there are places where the known laws of physics happen to differ a little from how we understand them to work. And it creates these wonderful magical spots. And I thought, okay, I could probably write that on a plane back from London, and because it's all in my head already. And I said, but the best part is you're going to talk about your personal experiences. And I said, well, that's one thing I've always tried to stay clear of. It always sounds very egocentric to me. And who the hell cares about my experiences? And she said, everybody's dying to hear how you ended up doing what you're doing, because you talk about these anecdotally, and they're fascinating. And I thought, well, who am I to disagree with public opinion? I guess it's time I wrote down some personal things because I can back them up with science, and that makes it more credible. So she said, and for the second part of the book, we're going to ask people to contribute their experiences in sacred places. And I thought, okay, and I'm not going to read them, and they're not going to know what I'm writing about as a test, because it turns out at the end, they were validating what I've been talking about, and I end up validating what they had experienced. So it became a wonderful synergistic piece of work. And the third part was about, well, how can people make this a practical thing? What do you do with portals? How is it appropriate for me in this lifetime, in this 21st century? What benefits come of it? And I thought, it's about time that was put on paper, because I'm always talking about it. And I thought I'd written about it. You get a bit confused after 9 books and 16 documentaries. You don't remember exactly what's been going on. And I thought, that's true. I've never actually published that piece of self-help advice. I'm in. So bingo. On a plane 6-hour flight back to London, I had a very nice reclining seat with no one next to me. And I thought, great, let me just start typing. And literally the first 3 chapters were written so quickly. And it's wonderful. So I'm very glad that it's all come together. It's very practical.
Right. And it's very light reading. We don't need to go and get out a dictionary or any of that, which is important with common sense. It's common information.
Just a change.
Yeah. I'm sorry, there's a few books that I had to literally go to the library and look up words because the author had made up words.
I play that joke with all of my other books because I'm kind of incensed by the fact that modern language has become very convenient and too simplified. And in the old days, words had a wonderful, mellifluous way of communicating information. Like when you go to the North Pole and you tell the Eskimos, "How's the ice today?" and they'll say, "What?" The ice, that thing over there. I said, "Well, what kind of ice?" There are 34 different words for ice. And the correct one will mean the difference between life and death. So in every chapter of every book that I ever wrote, there's always a word that I put in there deliberately of a long list of words that you have to go and look up in a really ancient dictionary because the words are now out of fashion. And I used to get some sort of hate mail, love mail of, "You bastard. Do you know how long it took me to find out the meaning of that? And now I can't stop using the word because it's so useful." I said, "That's why I'm doing it."
But it brings back the English. It brings back the great, like, our spoken language has really gone down almost to pictograph at this point. If you're reading like some of the manuscripts from the 1800s or even early 1700s of the metaphysical, you have to have a dictionary.
Yeah.
And like drag it, like every other sentence, you're looking up a word because it doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
So when I got to sit down with this one a little early, I started reading through it, and I'm like, finally, it's plain English. Because I've been digging into the Aleister Crowley mythos, and that's not plain English.
It's like a foreign language altogether. I mean, and that's the other reason why I enjoyed this one so much. There wasn't that sort of 50 pages at the back of the book with references and bibliography, which I usually want to back up everything, to bring the skeptic into the conversation. Otherwise, you're talking to the converted, and I'm not doing my job then. I mean, I want to change the parameters of the conversation. And there's no pictures in it for a change. And usually I'll put in about 180 pictures in the books. So it was a bit more pleasureful, more of a sort of a self-help guide. Which is easy on the mind. So a lot of the people that have been following my work for years, they're going to find. I actually put a little caveat on my website. I said this is going to be pretty easy for a change, and people are saying, "Oh no, I was looking forward to another mind bender," and I'm thinking, you can't please everybody, can you?
Well, here's the thing with that: you as a writer sometimes need your talks changed because you get stuck into a style, stuck into the same tone. And your readers will go, "This is the same thing you wrote on page 27 of the third book you wrote." And it's like, did I? Flip back. Well, I'll be. Two different subjects. Interesting. So what are the portals you're looking at?
I'm looking at all the hotspots on the face of the earth where the laws of physics are a little bit different and they do something weird to you when you interact with them. The Hopi had a very good way of describing them in their creation myth. They talk about how when the creator makes humans, sends one to the South Pole, not the North Pole, by the way, the South Pole, with a drum. And he hears the heartbeat of the Earth Mother beating, so he decides to start beating his drum. And when there's a sympathetic resonance between the two sounds, the Earth starts sending streams of life force to the surface, and the Earth becomes abundant with life. And then they said, but some spots were more abundant than others, and those were the spots of the fawn. And that's what became their sacred sites. So when you go to New Mexico and Arizona today, you'll know where they are, because if you're tuned in to the landscape, like most native people are, you'll sense there's something very thin between you and the rest of the universe. And if you put yourself in a state of centeredness or meditation, you don't need drugs or drinking. In fact, it gets in the way. You literally go away on this tube, which NASA knows as a magnetic portal, and that's what they call it, which literally goes from the surface of the Earth all the way up to beyond the atmosphere. And they only discovered this recently. They said that, about 1,000 miles, these magnetic portals rise like spirals. They connect with the solar wind, and it connects to the sun and possibly beyond that. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. Because you know what? And I had this conversation with a couple of NASA people. He said, the Tamil people of southern India beat you to it about 10,000 years ago. Why? Because they wrote in the Ayurveda in different language exactly the same thing. They call it the serpents that move along the earth that are mirrored in the sky, which are the arrows of sorcerers. A sorcerer being someone who works with the source, with natural energy, which of course moves like intertwining serpents. So it took NASA and a few $1 million of taxpayers' money to create this device where they actually see these portals. And they said they open every 8 minutes and then they close. So they're alive. So now we go back to the ancient people and we think, that's what they were tapping into the landscape. And that's why eventually, when we lost that contact with nature, just like we're doing today, they put standing stones on them, or a dolmen, or a passage mound, or a pyramid, or a Stonehenge, because we would know in the future where to go to connect with these places. And now we have the technology to measure the energy of these places. So it's all coming together beautifully.
Interesting. Now, does the Chief's door fit into that?
Does the
Chief's door fit into that? I believe it's either Hopi or Maya. There's like this stone door that, according to their mythos, the chief could open up and walk through into another realm. But
it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's very similar. In fact, you find that in South America, and there is one there that's actually a false door. The Egyptians had the same thing. It's an Lake Titicaca. It's in the shape of a T, and it's about this deep, so the door goes nowhere. The T shape is the Tao. It means literally the breath of God. That's where the information from the godly world comes in. So yeah, you can actually transmit yourself in a certain way through these portals and find yourself in an altered state. That said, I have spoken to the local people through my interpreter, who's an Aymara. It's one of the oldest people on the planet. They have their own unusual language. And they said, you know what? We keep away from that place. We give it respect because we've actually seen real people coming in and out of it, dressed in strange costumes, sometimes with the blue light coming out of the door. And you can see the fear in their eyes. You can't fake that look. And a couple of years ago, I was there, and a few weeks earlier, some guy had gone there as a tourist, and he actually got sucked into the portal, came back 3 days later, and he was completely in shock. I mean, something happened to this guy. He was not himself. And he said it wasn't fearful, it's just a strange thing, and that's why I'm in shock. It wasn't anything to be afraid of. So technically, yeah, you can go through physically if you happen to be at the same radio station, if you know what I mean.
Same frequency. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. And let's just clear up something, because you may get some mail about this, and I don't know if you study a lot of crime or court cases or whatever. This book is not about the same portals as Charles Daybell said he was creating in people's closets.
I don't think so. I mean, that sounds more like a psychological thing. But that said, these things are everywhere. I mean, there's one that comes through my living room because where I live here, there used to be an old Abenaki sacred site. So they were picking up the same thing. And of course, we urbanized the area. Just like outside the museum, Metropolitan Museum in New York, there's a big obelisk put there by the Scottish Rite Freemasons, the Templars, under another name. They changed their name, and they put it there to mark that hotspot. So these things happen to be everywhere. But if you take in a certain type of emotion with you to these places, it will reciprocate in kind, because energy doesn't give a damn one way or the other. It's just energy. It's like saying the electrical current coming out of my socket is bad. Well, no, actually, it lights my house. It's actually a good thing. So one of the things that they did in the old days and the mystery schools was you had to prepare your emotion and your fear. You have to get rid of your fear. You can't go interact with these things because it will amplify what you take in. So if you take yourself in a state of balance, you'll find that balance being reciprocated, or you go there in an open state, you'll get more information. If you take your emotional state and someone scratched my car, someone took my girlfriend, blah, 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 that is going to also be amplified as well. So there is a possibility that people do draw negativity out of that, but that's really coming from their own state of mind. So I wouldn't discount it, but I would say it's much more psychological, that particular case.
Right. So you say they're everywhere. How do you detect them? Are we just looking at ancient sites? Are we looking at, burial mounds? Are we talking to elders and going, okay, what's caused weirdness around here?
Before we went on there, we're talking about West Virginia, where you are, and how there's so many giants' graves, and 80% of them, there's no one buried there. They literally are the X that marks the spots. When we sort of forgot where these things are, they were built Egyptian temples or big pyramids on these things. So they're definitely marking these locations. Now, you can go there and pick it up with your own subtle energy body, because your body is made up of exactly the same stuff. We're electromagnetic beings. You can discover dowsing. You can also find out where they are through dowsing. But if you happen to have some extra money on you, you can get electrodes and magnetometers and go play. And one of the earliest ones was in 1973 in England, where they went to this stone circle in Oxfordshire, and they were reading about all these myths and traditions of these sites being alive and the stones moving and people disappearing. And they thought, let's find out. I mean, we've got the magnetometer. We might as well go and play. So they dragged the machine over the inside the stone circle, and lo and behold, it was being attached to a computer. And as the machine is moving across the soil, there's a printout on the computer that looks like a big spiral going through the entrance stone, going like a big coil right down to the center of the stone circle, and it goes right into the center of the earth. Kind of like the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. And there's some truth to that story, by the way. So they figured, wow, that's incredible. And we also detected the fact that there's a frequency inside the crop circle that is more accentuated than outside. So it's like the stones acted as a shield, creating a different environment. Now, years later, Princeton got hold of this. There's a group called the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Department. Very interesting people. They had a little bit of a budget to go and play and find out that gray area between science and mysticism. And one of the charges they did was, how can we measure the inclusion of consciousness and its effect on local events? So, kind of long story short, because this is peer reviewed and it's available, they developed a machine that can actually measure the inclusion of intention as a frequency in a room. So they did an experiment where they put a computer in the middle, and they got a group of people trained to focus their intent on altering the drum beat of the computer, and they succeeded. That's pretty powerful stuff. And I thought, this is great. It shows that our intent, we are the gods we're looking for. We can have a lot of, using your focused intent can have incredible consequences. So it's very careful to mind your thoughts. Then they got excited and they figured, why don't we go and see if sacred places behave the same way? So they went off to Wyoming. They went off to Devil's Tower, which is a terrible name. And they figured, let's go and see if we can measure a medicine man ceremony before and after and see what effect it did. So it had a marked effect on the machine. And as a control sample, they went to a Walmart car park, did the same thing, and nothing happened. Then they went to Egypt, and they found a way to get a portable version of the machine to take around. And the prime scientist, I think he's passed away now, as have most of them. He walked around the temples in sort of just quiet respect when there was nobody around, and the effects were the biggest ever seen. So the temple was a living organism that was already generating its own energy field. But then they thought, what would happen if you did a meditation here inside the temple? So they were in Karnak, Luxor, I believe Edfu, and also the Great Pyramid. And they found that the combination of the group's intention plus the temple created readings that went off the scale. So we are part of this spiritual technology, and we have the technology now to map it out in a way that you can actually measure.
That's even more interesting than what you think, because when you start talking about the shared group consciousness making changes, I'm thinking of Art Bell's experiments.
Yes. I remember Art Bell.
Yes. He's the one who introduced me to a lot of things that
he was great.
Wasn't covered. Yeah. But he did this experiment where he had the interest, he had his listening audience one night, like, just send out love, peace, all evening. And like the crime rate in all his major demographical areas dropped.
Wow.
Like you could take and literally map his stations and then map out the crime rate the day before and the day after his Friday show. And that night, the crime rate literally dropped. And I'm like, we are connected. What we put out does return. It just has to be focused.
Exactly. No, it's kind of funny though, and ironic that science is now beginning to validate what ancestors have been talking about for tens of thousands of years. I mean, the Aboriginal people will go across the Australian outback, totally featureless desert, and they'll suddenly hear something and they'll turn right and they'll go to a sacred site 60 miles away. And there was a group of professors at, I think it was the University of Melbourne, and they figured, Let's find out if they're making this up, which would be really hard to make up, walking 60 miles through a desert and finding yourself exactly where you needed to go and staying alive. And they actually found that when they used the Jalkiri, which is what they call the increase centers, to go from A to B, from sacred site to sacred site, I think the margin of error was less than 3%. And then they figured, what happens when you take the Jalkiri to non-sacred places? The margin of error was above 67%. So clearly they were tapped into this wonderful technology. It's a very useful and practical thing to know.
Mm-hmm. Have we looked into why 8 minutes?
Don't know. It's brand new information, and it takes time for scientists to publish this stuff because they're very conservative. They don't want to be laughed at. They want to make sure the dots, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. So it takes time. But from my conversations with people at NASA who appear at UFO conferences, and you know who they are because they come dressed in monks' cowls, and they have these rubber reptilian heads coming out of the cowls. They're very funny. There's a picture of me talking. Literally, someone took a picture of me looking very pensive, like, I'm really thinking very hard. And they've got their hands like this and like they're pleading with something. And we're talking about hyperdimensional mathematics, or at least they are. And they're saying, and this is how they get their kicks. They have a great sense of humor. And so it's interesting because we love reading about what you write about, and your peers, obviously, because so much of what the ancients were dealing with, we're now discovering thanks to the technology. And the irony is not lost on us, and especially as 11,000 years ago, at the end of the Ice Age, we now know that the Earth was pummeled by a whole bunch of meteorites. We know where they came from. It's the Tauri meteor shower. It goes around every November for 17 days. The thing now, we now have the technology to validate this because the big chunks that hit this 11,000 years ago, they're coming back round again exactly in the same decade that so many of the world's traditions are saying it's going to be a big change. It's going to be almost the near end of the world of civilization. We're about to move to a new age. It's all coinciding beautifully. So I kind of like the fact that we've finally found a way to validate these ancient people, because why would have they made it up?
Well, but why even there is so much information that the Victorian scientists hid from us that is now being rediscovered. And then, we've got all this other, so many places. Like, if you listen to non-scientific conversations of Egypt and of native South America and of upper England, all this is the same stuff. It's just a different language, and it's like, okay,
exactly,
this cannot be, three people cannot be talking the same thing, just in a different language.
Exactly. And I think, and also the power of myth and folklore, because a lot of historians and academics dismiss this, but you know what? They fail to understand that myth is a theatrical device. And that's what helps you remember an otherwise mundane story that you might forget after the weekend at the pub. So if I was to tell you the story of, a knight that has to climb over all of these hurdles and almost kill himself to get to a flaming tower to rescue a princess, you go, oh, that was a great story. And you go home from the pub, have a hangover in the morning, and you forget it. Now, if you call it Star Wars, now you're going to remember the lines for decade after decade after decade. And essentially, Star Wars is a rewriting of the story of Arthur and the Holy Grail, Jason and the Argonauts, and the voyage of Osiris meeting his divine bride Isis in the other world. So you're just changing the language to fit a different audience. So the trick is you've got to read it from their point of view, not from your point of view. You have to be in their shoes, and that's what takes time. You've got to be patient and slow down your rate of thinking, and then it gets there. I mean, for example, one of the best books that I've ever read, and I'm now in the 6th reading, I'm now beginning to understand what it says, is called the Edfu Building Texts, and they're literally scrawled all over the Temple of Edfu in Egypt. And the Greeks found it in bits and pieces. They restored the temple to its original form. And even they were kind of struggling to find out what it meant. So they put page 1 on pillar 12, page 2 on pillar 56. And there's an academic in Britain that finally put the whole thing together. Thank God. Unfortunately, it's an academic book, so it's like $450. But that book is not leaving my shelf. It's staying there.
Understandable. I would put that into the safe because, you know, Academic
There's a
books are hard
tracker
to get
on
your
it and
hands on.
everything.
Exactly. That way you can locate it, because those texts, people understand this, when we get our academic information that we're actually delving into, and it's actually useful information, and then you
It's
start
very
comparing it
useful.
to others, it's so difficult to find cross references.
Exactly. I mean, the Egyptians were talking about when the Greeks finally showed up, and they were just
Yeah.
about on the ascendancy, and the Egyptians were going down. They said, you know what? And it was a lovely line. It's like they're making fun of the Greeks. It's like, you
Hmm.
Greeks, you're too young. Wait, you've been around as long as we have. We have recorded every major event for over 39,000 years. And there's a papyrus that actually lists
Hmm.
the exact king list. The one that
Uh-huh.
archaeologists prefer did not exist because it's very uncomfortable. And they said, during our time, we've seen the Earth actually flip on its axis twice. We have experienced the Earth rotating backwards, and the places where the sun rises, it's where it used to set, and it sets where it used to rise. We've experienced that 4 times. So the
Hmm.
Greeks are like, my God, these people are really incredibly old. And even the Romans said,
Right.
oh, the Egyptians are the oldest people on the planet. And this book is outlining everything. And it talks about the time
Yeah.
when the gods arrive in Egypt, just after a big catastrophe has taken over the earth, when there's indescribable cold. And you're able to nail it at the beginning of the Younger Dryas, which is the last ice age.
Right.
And they arrive in Egypt in about 10,500 BC, because it coincides with an agricultural revolution on the Nile that no archaeologist can explain. We as hunter-gatherers should not have known animal domestication or crop domestication at that early stage. It happened around
Right.
8,500 BC. Well, that coincides with the story when the gods arrived from a sinking island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and they set up the mounds, which
Hmm.
are impregnated with the knowledge of a creator God, upon which, I quote, will be built the future historic temples. And those are the ones we see today. So underneath Edfu, for example, there are 13 layers of older temples under there. And again, they don't
Interesting.
want to talk about that because the alignment
Yep.
of that temple to Orion, the first rising of Orion's belt, is in 10,500 BC on the spring equinox, which is a very important
Hmm.
date in Egypt. So yeah,
Right.
these books are full of wonderful information, and they were closer to the events than we are today. So why not start with their story? Because obviously we're so. In fact, technically, when Herodotus was noting information about the Great Pyramid, he was closer to the time it was built than we are today, and we have the audacity to discredit Herodotus. Well, he was actually there. We weren't
Yeah.
still around for another 2,500 years, so why not
At
start
least.
there?
Right. Now, here, debatable question for you. Is it the Egyptians now the original Egyptians? Or
Oh
what
God,
did they
no.
inherit Egyptian?
No, it's all disappeared. I mean, migration and emigration,
Hmm.
the two most common things on the planet. They've been going on for so long, and by the time we get into the historical era with Cleopatra, there's been
Hmm.
so much DNA mixed around with different peoples. The Libyans,
Hmm.
the Somalis, and the Ethiopians, and Arabic people,
Right.
and Semitic people. So it's all over the place. But the
Right.
bloodline of the gods, it survived right up to the end of Tutankhamun's time. And you can tell with the elongated skulls, for example,
Okay.
that's also
Yeah.
found all around the world. They all had red hair. And again, I'm describing what
Right.
the commentators wrote up to 12,000 years ago. So these are not my
Right.
opinions. All of these gods were described as light-skinned, not white,
Hmm.
light-skinned, with blonde
Hmm.
or red hair, with green or blue eyes. And sometimes they had these elongated skulls. And you find that in the
Right.
Pacific, in South America, in Japan, in Indochina, in India, in Sumeria, in Armenia, and also
Hmm.
in Egypt and, of course, Central America. So it's a worldwide thing.
And Ireland.
And Maryland, yes.
Ireland.
Oh, Ireland, yes. And it's the same people, by the way. And
Uh-huh.
if you link back at the text, they said that, after the flood, not many humans survived, and neither did many of the gods. But the ones that volunteered to stay behind, they said,
Hmm.
we're going to help the surviving humans get themselves back on their feet, and we'll help them start their civilization. This is their time. Our time is over. We're going to help
Right.
them. And once we get them on a solid footing, we're going to move back to the shadows. We don't want to rule over anybody. And I can't find
Right.
any text in the world that says that we ever worship these people. In fact, if anything, there was a mutual common respect on both sides
Okay.
everywhere. No sense of, oh, whoa. No, it wasn't about that at all. And so they said that at the beginning, because we also had not many gods left, and we were 8.5 feet tall, we could not successfully breed with human women. The Wichita of Oklahoma have this story. And they said when the giant people were moving in from inland, from West Virginia, that they would try to take a bride from us. And if it was a mutual consent, we'd say, okay, if everybody's happy. The problem is you're 8.5 foot tall. The woman is only 5'5". It's not going to end well. And indeed, the women died during childbirth, giving birth to infants. So they had to stop the practice. But at some point they succeeded, because in Egypt, they talk about a race that became half human, half divine. And they basically were in and out of the Egyptian throne until they could find a responsible human to take over the job.
Right.
And if they didn't, they would step in and wait until they could find someone else to take over. So they definitely did not want to get involved. But they did succeed. And eventually, they talk about how the first pharaoh of a purely human bloodline, it's an actual quote, takes the throne of Egypt in 3100 BC, which is Mena, which actually means the first ruler. It's not a title. It's not a name. It's a title. So they did succeed. So the bloodline began to be much more degraded as they interbred with humans. And we get to the point where we have Amenhotep III with his enormous elongated skull. And I have a small version of him over there on my shelf. He, of course, was the father of Akhenaten. So he also had that DNA. And Tutankhamun was the last. There were two daughters that survived from Pharaoh Menkaure, and they ended up being escorted to Scythia. They married the offspring of the people of Anu, who were called the Tuwa de Danu by that time. Used to be the Anunnaki. And they eventually became the founding of the bloodline in Ireland, called the Tuatha de Danann. So it was still surviving in Ireland all the way up to about 2000 BC, maybe 1000 BC. It's hard to tell because a lot of the scripts up in Ireland are missing. So it did survive. That bloodline did survive, but not in the same way. And the difference between us and them was that their special ability was in the blood. So that's why they didn't want to mix it. And the other one was the fact that the part of the skull that connects you to the spiritual lobe is in the rear of the skull. That's why the skull was elongated. We humans need a bigger frontal cortex because we have to process information. That's why that piece at the back, which scientists are still trying to work out what goes on back there. We still haven't worked it out, you see. It's the most mysterious part of the brain.
I think we'll find out. I think they'll get
to absolutely. That. Yeah, for a few more $1 million and a few more machines, and we'll definitely get there.
Well, that and a few more scientists that will actually step up and try to figure it out. Because I'm sorry, there's a lot. If we compare a lot of scientific research in ESP from the early 1900s compared to now, it's the same research. They haven't even progressed on it at all. It's like they figured out what salt was and they went on.
And the Victorians were very curious in terms of science. I mean, they had the best psychic research ever done up until that period. I mean, there was a wonderful connection. It actually goes back to my first book with crop circles. There was an experiment that was discovered by Gerald Hawkins, who basically was the first people to decipher Stonehenge, a great astronomer. And he said, it's funny, the crop circles, because the real ones, I should point out, because of the way they're put together with these invisible geometric theorems that do not exist in our language, they also, by their very nature, giving you musical notes, which can be transcribed into an alphanumerical alphabet. So we can actually get series of letters, like the two initials, like their names of things. So we tried playing around with presidents or emperors or anything, and we ran out of ideas. And one day, he had this incredible leap of imagination where he was reading about the Society of Psychic Research that they said, we're going to conduct some experiments, posthumous experiments, when the president dies, he will communicate back to the rest of society in an unmistakable mathematical way that will include his initials using an alphanumerical system based on musical notation. So he applied the names of the past presidents to the initials that we're getting in crop circles, and they matched. And I thought, my God, at least a series of the crop circles were the people who are already gone, who are communicating from the afterlife saying, you know what, it continues. And part of this phenomenon is to do with the communication with an invisible form of consciousness. That was incredible. And that came out of the Victorian era, along with the cathode ray tube. And the first image that's projected on a TV screen is the Templar logo. And I thought, oh, and of course, the Templars were very mystical people, and you hardly get to hear about that. You get to hear about the conspiracy theory. I mean, I wrote a book on that a few years ago, and it took me 15 years to research it. Turns out that they're the progeny of the Essenes, and the Essenes are the progeny of the Mandeans, and they're the progeny of the Buddhists, and they're the progeny of the people in Japan who were doing this stuff 8,000 years before the Templars. Nothing new under the sun.
No, there isn't. And what's more interesting is that line of hierarchical tradition you just spouted off there, from one organization to another, to another, to another, of just passing text down. It's like the Templars supposedly found and I debate this because I think I have a theory on this, but they found the Holy Grail in Egypt and came back and went through all that. It was already in France, but they went to Egypt to find it.
I have another theory on that one too.
Go for it.
The Grail is not a physical object at all. You have to understand the troubadour tradition in the middle of Europe to find out what really is about. And you have to understand the language of metaphor and allegory, because otherwise, if the church cottoned onto this, they'd all be dead. They had to play it really carefully. No, the Grail is a couple of things, and it's to do with an inner discovery of the self. It's the ultimate, because the initiate or the knight, he goes and marries this divine woman who holds the Grey on a silver platter. Okay, and you think, what the hell? The Grail is on a platter, but she is the Grail as well, and so is the platter that holds the object. And I had to go into Portugal to find out what this is all about, because everybody's taking the eye off the ball. The Templars had created the Kingdom of Portugal before the first independent nation state in Europe, by the way. And that's where they put up all of their secret stuff. And everybody was looking at France and England and everything. No, it was happening in Portugal 13 years before the official founding date of the Templars. And I've got the original documents to prove it. And they put this building, the most famous building of the Templars, is an octagonal or 16-sided chapel in Tomar. It's still there today. And you have to look at the etymology of what they called it, and that is the Grail. But that's not what it is. The building is not the Grail. It's what took place inside it. And what took place inside it was something called a living resurrection, where the initiate went into this umbilical cord under the ground, went into the sacred cave, had an induced near-death experience, left the body, went into the other world, came back, and he was said to have married a divine bride who basically was the epitome of all the knowledge of the universe, because the universe is expansive. It's a feminine person. That's why you get the Black Madonna, not because she was Ethiopian, but because the black skin represents wisdom when it resided in the dark of the universe before light and sound ever existed. So they consummated this divine marriage, and they came up through this hole, and they appeared in the middle of this chapel, and they were declared risen from the dead. And they did exactly the same thing in Jerusalem under the temple during Solomon's time. And there's a phrase that they said that the masters of the mysteries used to undertake these mysteries teachings under the Temple of Jerusalem of Egyptian provenance. And that was a long time before the Christians adopted the phrase, which is why there was this big argy-bargy about, did Jesus get nailed to a cross? And the Gnostics said, of course not. You're confusing a spiritual truth with an actual event. Only criminals got nailed to crosses. And even the Arab people said the same thing, said, no, Jesus was a prophet on par with Muhammad. I mean, and they actually respect Jesus, by the way. And they said, no, they nailed a guy called Simon. He was the criminal. Jesus, no, the whole thing was a tradition of leaving the body and going walkabout. And Jesus went on to Kashmir, where he dies at a very old age, and his grave is still there. So they're following this very, very old tradition. But the nuts and bolts of it that I discovered was that these hotspots where they undertook these ceremonies, turns out, were the same portals that I've been describing. So they're already picking up this information on the land and making life a lot easier for themselves, because you're taking a poison to have this induced experience. But the very nature of the electromagnetic signature of where these sacred caves and temples were also facilitated that state. So it made it much easier to understand.
Very interesting comparing it to like the South American traditions of doing the same thing.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of
making their medicine men.
Absolutely. And they talk about the same thing down there. You probably, I'm sure people have heard of the chulpas, those sort of conical towers around Lake Titicaca. The Inca didn't build any of that stuff. I can show you what the Inca built. It's not very nice, very crude, and they fall apart during every earthquake. And then you got the other stuff on top of the hill, which looks like it was stone that had been kneaded together by a bread maker. I mean, there's no mortar. The stones are beautifully interlocked. They're not going to go anywhere. I've been inside one of those, and I go there without any expectation. Talk about leaving the body like that. And I came back 20 minutes later, and I thought, that's interesting. I better write about this and do some research. And it turns out they call them the houses for the soul, not of the soul, for the soul. And they always face the equinox sunrise, and specifically Venus rising before the sun on the equinox sunrise, which, of course, in Egypt and in anywhere on the planet is the mark of the risen initiate. You see, the first sun before the other sun. It was a wonderful discovery. So those places are also big power points.
Very cool.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Egyptian language in South America and vice versa. Just like in Central America, there's a lot of Egyptian language there. And for example, if you go to Egypt and you ask for water, you say Maya. And then you go to Central America and you go Maya. Oh, that's the water people. Those are the Maya. And there's a wonderful frieze at the Temple of Uxmal, which looks very Egyptian around the base, I have to say. And there's a priest from Egypt with the ceremonial headdress going there on a visit. And in Karnak, there's a Maya priest going there with a ceremonial headdress, extending the courtesy. So there's a lot of backwards and forwards that was going on for thousands of years. And in South America, they even said, up here in Lake Titicaca, the Viracocha and his shining ones, they came here after the flood to rebuild the temples because they were already here in 15,000 BC, and it can be proved by the alignment of the stones. And they said, the Egyptians used to go backwards and forwards from here all the way back to Egypt, but they had to go a long way because there was a lot more land in the Pacific back then. And of course, they're absolutely right, because the sea level rose 400 feet in the blink of a geological eye. So there's a lot of Egyptian provenance also in South America and even in the Pacific, where the main island in the Solomon Islands is called Isa Tabu, which means the sacred abode of Isis. Now, what's she moonlighting in the Solomon Islands, I wonder? Well, the best one, which I believe is in Fiji, there's an island called Ra-Iatea, literally means the white-skinned people of Ra. Oh, travel is so wonderful.
It is. It is. And then, if we go over to, and this is something that was pointed out to me by a student of mine, they were looking deeply into Apollo because they're Greek pantheon and Greek, all into the Greek. And it's like Apollo goes away for every 40 years to Ireland and becomes Luke.
Yeah. And they had the temple, or 18.6 years. That's right, 18.6 years. It turns out to do with the cycle of the moon, which is all hardwired in the stone circle in northern Scotland, which is the highest position where you could map out the lunar standstill, and then it goes south again. I mean, that is genius. I mean, that's the one thing that connects all these people. They were master astronomers. They were totally obsessed with the sky and long periods of time, as though they're tracking something that comes around regularly over long periods of time. And it's really to do with meteorites again. The fact that luck favors the prepared. If you know that you're going to be hit in 300 years from now, you prepare. You dig tunnels, you go underground, and you learn to live another day. So they basically knew that the stuff was coming. And in fact, I started the project trying to map out the time when we have clusters around the world, when we put down all our tools and we go on a big temple building binge around the world. And it's an imperfect process because so many of the sites have been destroyed and the carbon-14 datings are all over the place. So, but I have found significant clusters within 100 years of major solar flare activity that takes out half of the Earth and burns the Earth to a crisp. The last one being in 1300 BC that destroyed the Bronze Age. Another one around 2500 BC, the time when the third phase of Stonehenge is built. And also part of the pyramid shafts are also added as well. So we seem to put down our tools and go, oh, we're about to be hit by something catastrophic. We need to build more temples because the survivors will know where to go to pick up information. Right. So we're not going to lose everything. We don't start off as cave people ever again. We pick up from where we left off. And I thought, what a really great insurance policy. You're giving the survivors a legacy, and you hope that they're going to pick it up and take it elsewhere.
Right. And hopefully they'll remember it.
Exactly. And it's kind of ironic that now in the 21st century, I see more people being attracted to sacred sites than at any other time during my work. I mean, partly to do with social media, partly because people are becoming much more awakened. Believe it or not, they are. They're also getting a lot of trivial sort of attention from social media and selfies and all that. But you're always going to get a part of the population that is really never really going to figure it out. But that's okay.
Right.
It's Earth, you know. I mean, I'm not perfect. I mean, any of us who incarnated aren't perfect either. If you're perfect, you wouldn't bother to incarnate. There's no point. So we're all a work in progress.
Right. When do you think they'll find the inlaid information in the DNA?
Oh, I don't know. That's way above my pay grade. I do know when I was writing my first book on crop circles that I happened to corresponded with Greg Braden. You may have heard of him. Very short chap, by the way. You think you look at the pictures with the big hair. Yeah, I didn't knock him over with one of my knees. So,
my goodness, honey.
Yeah, he's a very short
guy. We have to be careful around him.
Yeah, gentleman. And he said, it's funny. I was looking at this specific crop circle, and he showed me the picture. And I said, it's funny because we looked at it and we thought that actually looks like a drunken farmer going around with a roller. But we actually did the due process. It turns out it was the real thing. And whenever they lay down very unusual crop circles, it was to get our attention as researchers.
Right.
Turns out it's kosher. So he said, it's funny because I didn't know anything about crop circles. And I looked at the breaks in the actual design. I thought, what would happen if you measure the breaks as a percentage of a circle and plot them on a circumference? And it's one of those wonderful moments of in research where you go, wow, an original idea. Those strategic breaks happen in the crop circle happen to match the portions of DNA that are not coded for protein. Now, he left it there, and I said, you know what? I've got the other part of the equation, because we've been monitoring hundreds and hundreds of people, many of them who are skeptics, who say, something has happened to me. It's like I had a change in consciousness, or something has happened to me. And I feel like I've had an awakening. And I thought, okay, let's just write this down, because, skeptics don't talk like this. And I'm wondering, is the reason that crop circles are becoming a kind of a religion, something that they're interacting with at a molecular level? Because we know that it's doing it to the plants, okay? We can prove it in a laboratory. So what effect might they be having in awakening something in our DNA? Because there are parts of our molecule that is not coded for protein. And the next part of the equation is that we're getting a signature sound frequency. It's above the human hearing range. So you have to go there with special equipment. And back in the 70s, someone, I can't remember who it was, a very famous scientist, mapped out the human body as a series of frequencies. And she noted that there's a big gap where nothing exists. There's no radio station on the dial. And we found the same range of frequencies in crop circles multiplied by 10. So not only were the crop circles filling in a missing gap in our frequency range, put one and one together, now we probably believe that they're activating parts of our DNA which are sitting there waiting to be coded or woken up. And that was Greg's idea. And I think he probably was onto something. So it took 6 people from different walks of life to pull their ideas together and go, wow, that's why people are so attracted to this stuff.
Right. And, and that's why I think it's so important to get a lot of the researchers and scientists and all that in rooms talking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I don't think that's occurring in our community right now.
It's difficult. It's a very conservative medium. There's not much money to go around, very few university places. So I get them. What I don't understand is the academic mafia that attacks people like me for doing our job that they should be doing. I talk to everybody. I don't care how crazy it sounds, because I want to pool information. I talk to geologists, neurosurgeons, whatever it takes. I can paint from a bigger palette, and that's cool. That's what science is.
Right.
And you have to admit that you don't know everything. So if tomorrow a new piece of information comes into my desk, I go, hey, the theory was really good up until this moment. Now we can change the theory because we have new information. That's what you do, but they can't do that. So they attack us, and it's I get these people off the record, and a few of them will admit to me that actually the independents are doing much better research because we are unencumbered by the kind of books that we are forced to read, because we can't talk about those books because the university has said, oh no, we don't talk to those people. They're not part of our club. I mean, that is so dumb on every level.
Right.
It's just holding back science. So they'll say, we are actually doing much better work. And also they also admitted that they do sort of look at our research and they'll actually start to pick up on it. And when they find enough evidence to convince themselves, then they'll publish a paper and they'll take credit for it. Meanwhile, we've been trashed, and we're the ones who came up with the idea in the first place. And we just laugh at this, because we're on Netflix and they're not, so there you are.
Right. Not only that, but you write better.
Exactly. And my colleague Graham Hancock, of course, was getting the butt end of all of this. So, and he's absolutely right. He might not be perfect. None of us are, but at least he's giving you the information and you can track the information. He didn't just say, I have a theory and that's it. No, he actually tells you the information and lists everything and the references, a lot of them from scientific sources that these people are complaining that don't exist. But said, well, we just quoted your paper. Don't you remember your own paper that we quoted in our own research? It's laughable. So it's sad, but it's slowly, grudgingly getting there. I'll tell you a really funny story. Speaking of portals, Stonehenge, which is a very powerful place. I work with a psychic in Britain who's a great friend of mine, and she also works with the police to solve crimes. And she has a near 100% record. Of course, the police don't want this to go public for good reason. Nor does she. Exactly. But they will come knocking on her door and she'll go, oh, you're looking for the white van registration number, blah, 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 blah. Well, one day, as we're in a group and she's channeling, we got the information. This would have been about 28 years ago, where we found out that the original site for Stonehenge are the original 56 post holes. Okay, it's a calendar, which the scientists haven't really given much thought to, which they should, because the date comes in from the management at 8,000 BC. Now, I can actually tell you that that's correct, because the two post holes in the car park actually align to Orion rising for the first time exactly at that location. And those people were intimately connected with that constellation. Anyway, she puts this out as a matter of sort of conversation in her archaeological group to whom she belonged. And they said, okay, crazy lady, Stonehenge, 8,000 BC. Yeah, whatever. Well, it took them 15 years to go, well, let's find out, because we can do carbon-14 dating on the holes. So they went to those Aubrey holes. They dug in there. They found some organic material under the original chips for the bluestones, which had now been moved to the center of the circle, because the temple has to move over time. So they found the organic matter and they wrote the paper on it, and the date is 8,000 BC. And within a couple of weeks, the paper has been removed from every single library, website. You can't find it anymore, but I published on my website, on my second book, before it disappeared. And I remember it because of that.
Well, and there's a lot of information that happens that way.
Exactly.
Like, you got to grab it when it's there. Like, if you are looking directly into like quantum physical theory, you've got to have like a Google alert, because when it comes, you download it, you screenshot it, or it's going to be gone.
Exactly.
Because of the I don't know. A lot of people have theory on who it was. I like your scientific mafia that has been occurring since, I don't know, pre-Victoria.
I was being polite.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's just what they do to each other. They're very unpleasant people, and then they go after us with even bigger venom. It's really there ought to be lawsuits at some point for defamation, but you know what? You got better things to do than hang out.
Who's that time? We've got millions of years of information to sort through.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give you a great example of this. I mean, Sacsay Waman in Cusco, or as the locals call it, sexy woman. I think they think it's funny, and it actually is very funny. I was there with a group, and someone was talking to me in my ear, telling me, you need to look at me from above and find out my original name and the connection to Egypt. And I thought, what? And I thought, okay, group, I'm not on drugs. It's not the altitude. Just go and play. We'll reconvene in an hour. And I wrote this down very quickly. And I thought, what the hell? So I did some local research in the libraries, and it took me a couple of weeks to put this together. And I found out from the local historians that Sacsay Waman had a mirror image on the opposite side. The Spaniards basically pulled down the stones and dropped them down the hill to create Cusco. Right. So from above, it actually looks like the wings of a bird. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. And then I asked my Aymara friend, does Sacsayhuamán mean anything in the original Aymara language? And it said, yeah, it means the place of the satisfied falcon. And I thought, the falcon is not a totem bird in the Andes, it's the condor. Yeah, that's right. Why would they say that? Because if a visiting Egyptian was here, he'd understand that phrase. What does it mean? It means that you're talking about Horus, because the satisfied falcon is the emblem that Horus takes on after he's basically come back from the dead, having been his father Osiris. So an Egyptian would totally understand that. And I thought, that means there must be 3 other sites here, which should be in a perfect equilateral triangle, and they're all associated with the initiation ceremony. And it turns out there are, and it's in a perfect equilateral triangle. And that's just me interacting with the portal, literally by accident. And I'm sitting there taking a group, but I'm also there keen to understand the origin. What is it all about? That's the question I always ask. And it comes back in this cryptic information. And then, of course, I have to do all the legwork. Otherwise, it would be too easy. So it does work. It does give you a bit of a sort of an edge in terms of research. But then you've got to go into libraries and look for old, smelly manuscripts. And that is half the fun.
It is, but it's also half the interest for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is actually decoding. Like, I don't know about you, but I've talked to many researchers, and they have this innate hunger to figure out the why.
It's curiosity. And the passion that drives you. It's like there's an itch you can't scratch, okay? And one of my passions is, again, back to language. Language is so much more definitive in the earlier era, much more descriptive. And I've taken it upon myself to learn dead languages. So if I'm asking in South America, Vida Cocha, what does it mean? Oh, it means something completely different. It has nothing to do with foam of the sea. That's just a corruption that the Spanish didn't quite understand. And it has to do with an astronomical plane on the ecliptic. So, wow, so he was an astronomer. Of course he was. And his 7 followers, the Hai Wapanti, what does that mean? Oh, that means shining people. Oh, so you're telling me that the shining ones, followers of Horus, were here in Egypt. They said, oh, well, yes, the Egyptians were here. And they had no idea that they called the Egyptian gods by exactly the same nickname. You just connected 2 cultures, literally, by understanding Aymara. And that's what I love doing, looking at the origin of the language, because it tells you so much. It's so full of history. It's like in Scotland. Nobody knows where the stone circles came from and what they're given those names. And I was wandering around there one day, and I thought, I wonder what this has to do with another culture that was here that came from somewhere else. And again, these images pop through, and it formed the basis of my previous book about Scotland's hidden sacred past, which led the story all the way back to Armenia and the lords of Anu, the Anunnaki, or their progeny that end up in Scotland under a different name. And all the names are Armenian. And once you understand what the names mean in Armenian, like the Ring of Brogard, for example, the biggest stone circle, it actually means the enclosure of the sun, which of course it is. It's a solar calendar. And Stennis down the road, which is my favorite, it means the place of gathering. And when the Vikings went there, they wrote, we don't know who was here, but there were these very tall people dressed in these white robes, and they used to have their council in some stone circle near here, not the town that we've built now, because it's too far away from the port. And I thought, I wonder if it's Stennis, and that's what it means. It's a place of gathering. And the Maes How, which is the mound next to it, it means the place of gathering of the noble people of Orion. But the term also applies to the Armenian people, the people of Ara, from where we get Aramaic and Armenia, and it relates to Orion. And I thought, you couldn't make this stuff up if you could. So again, another wonderful sort of correlation between the portal, learning, and helping you on your journey.
Right. Very much so. Well, darling, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I'm glad to be partly in West Virginia today, one of the most mystical parts of the country. And my American friends laugh at me when I say that. And I think we'll have the last laugh on that story. And I do actually want to go there and do a bit of research on the mound.
Please do. And if you come down my area, sit down, let me know. We'll have coffee.
Oh, the first 2 scotches are on you, mate.
Not a problem. No problem.
I know they've got some good stuff down there.
We do. And if not, I've got some whiskey from Scotland. I've been aging for a good while.
Oh, is it at least 16 years old?
Yes, it was 16 when I got it.
Oh, well, you're definitely a bona fide researcher then.
Yes. All right, darling. You have a lovely evening. Guys, go check out his documentary, get his book. You've got what? 14 docs out but now?
16 now.
16. Are they all on Gaia or are they everywhere?
They're mostly on Gaia, and they're also on my Vimeo channel if you don't want to take out the subscription and do one-on-one. So just go to my website. You get the choice there.
Can you go ahead and spell that for them?
Invisibletemple.com.
Yep, and it's spelled in English. If you're listening in another language, go Google Invisible Temple.
It's been hacked by Russians if it's another language.
Well, no, I have audiences all over the world, like Russia. One of my largest listening audiences is actually South America. That's why I was like, it's in English. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, darling. Have a lovely evening. Guys, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Are you ready for an enchanting journey of self-discovery and empowerment? Dive into the mystical world of Wicca with our courses guided by Lord Aeson Knight. Unveil Wicca's secrets, explore fundamental principles, and delve into essential topics like deity relationships and the purpose of rituals. Aeson Knight, a third-degree high priest, shares his wisdom through life coaching lessons, guiding you towards a brighter future. Step into the inner circle of enlightenment. Enroll today to embark on a journey toward a more empowered you. Click the link to take your first step into the magical circle.
Ready to join the Psychic Coffee Shop Network? By becoming our patron, you'll unlock exclusive content from Aeson Knight, host of the Psychic Coffee Shop podcast and co-host of the Mountain Bears podcast, alongside the tech-savvy Techie Joe. Choose from subscription options ranging from Tall $1, Grande $5, to Venti $10 per month, supporting us in covering production costs and beyond. Depending on your subscription level, enjoy discounts on private readings, free access to classes and special events, behind-the-scenes extras, and the chance to participate in station meetings. Plus, you'll get early access to new content and the opportunity to shape future topics. We'll acknowledge your support in the credits of our videos. Don't wait. Brew some magic and join us today as a valued member. Link in the show description. Aeson Knight, your gateway to a transformed life. In a world where anyone can claim to be a life coach, Aeson stands out as a true professional with the skills and qualifications to guide you on your journey to success. So why invest in a personal life coach? Let's explore the game-changing benefits Aeson brings to the table. Ever find it hard to stay committed to change on your own? Aeson's expertise ensures you stay on track. With him as your coach, that internal drive kicks in, motivating you to keep your promises and achieve your goals. Making a change is tough, but Aeson makes it 1,000 times easier. He's your unwavering support, guiding you through challenges, pushing you beyond your limits, and believing in you even when you doubt yourself. Friends are great, but they may not always want to see you succeed. Aeson, on the other hand, is dedicated solely to your success. He removes negativity and limiting beliefs, giving you the tailored support you need. Forget endless hours deciphering advice from books and videos. Aeson is your shortcut to effective change. He saves you time and money by offering personalized attention, guiding you toward the tools and lessons that will truly work for you. Ready for a better tomorrow? Book your discovery call with Aeson Knight now. Take the first step toward the life you've always dreamed of. Aeson Knight, your partner in transformation. Start your journey today.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Great. Had a wonderful conversation. Delved into a lot of stuff. Like that was a power-packed hour, guys.
It was. There was like I was in the background, so I was hearing, and it was like that is a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and it's because it ties into a lot.
Mm-hmm. So great book. Definitely check it out.
Yes, and Grabby's read other ones. Grabby's documentaries. Like he's doing a lot of deep, cathartic work that really can open up a lot of things for, especially those looking to study metaphysics.
Oh yeah. So yeah, and I'm sure that link will be in the show description, so you guys can get right to the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Right. So I hear that you have a poll for us.
Well, I have an Am I the Asshole for us.
That works.
All right. So am I the asshole for not giving my mom her portion of inheritance? My mother, 61 female, is upset with me, 31 male, for not just giving her the portion of my deceased father's life insurance payout. My dad passed away last year and had a substantial life insurance policy that was paid out to me and my siblings. Legally, my mother did not receive anything from life insurance. The portion that would have gone to her, around 1.2 million, went to me instead. A few months before he passed, he took me out to lunch to explain that he did this because if she had been a beneficiary on the policy, she would have been able to withhold the portion that was to be paid to the kids. I don't know if that would have been possible, but the second we got the money, she said that if it were up to her, she would have kept it from us until she saw fit. He also expressed his concern about my mom making financial decisions, as she has never been in charge of her own finances. I was given guidelines on how to use her portion, but my dad mostly left the decision up to me as he trusts me and I have a background in finance. To be clear, I am not withholding money from my mother. I pay for anything that she needs, and I have set up all of her utilities and monthly bills to come out of an account that houses some of her portion. The remainder I have in a low-risk investment account run by a company that was recommended by one of my father's most trusted colleagues. In addition, she also received a significant payout from my father's employer, ballpark just under 1 million, that she can use as she pleases. She is able to see the amount at any time, and the only thing I have stopped her from buying was a plot of land that she decided she would buy for her parents, then sell or build on when they pass. The problem is that anytime I speak with her, it always turns into an argument about how she wants me to transfer all the money to her, so I don't have access to her money, along with guilt trips about how she is hurting that my dad didn't trust her. This has gone on 2 years and been gossiped about on her side of the family. I even got a call from my grandma begging me to transfer the money because I was, quote, hurting my mother. She has also gone as far as to hire a lawyer to try to get me to pay her out quickly. To pay her, who quickly told her that she didn't have any legal grounds. At this point, I have thought about just transferring the money, but it would be complicated to do without paying taxes on the money she received. I do also fear that her spending habits could cause her to run out of money, as she has been throwing money at any household issues that come up and has been taking monthly vacations. I know it's a lot of money to burn through, but she has a lot of expenses, and her spending has gone up significantly since my dad passed. Am I the asshole? Should I just find a way to give her unrestricted access to her money and wash my hands of it? If it weren't for my dad asking me to help her with this, I probably would have already done so. I found this.
You're not the asshole.
Yeah, I'm going with not the asshole. I hate your father put you in this position, and basically, because there's a lot of moving things here. one, it's already a strenuous thing when you have children in charge of their parents' money. Like that seems to universally just piss people off.
Right.
So I'm more troubled that he didn't go a more common route, which was to build a trust and a trustee system that it like avoided you entirely, and put her on like a peer level. So that, you know, if your father wanted to restrict her access to funds, but ensure she was taken care of and had reasonable fund access,
right.
That she was dealing with someone, at least on her peer level, that she could feel a little more comfortable with.
Right.
I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I just...
Nor are you hurting her.
No, you're not hurting her. I do find it... This is one of those moments of, if you are a spouse and you're planning for your child, any of your children, to basically become their mother's keeper or their father's keeper, in regards to money, think it through. Like, you're going to throw a wrench into that family dynamic, and it's going to be ugly, even if this child does everything right.
Right.
Like, it's not going to go well. No one appreciates that.
Right.
So, not the asshole on my side. I do think it's a shitty situation to be in.
And I would hire a business manager for her. Even though it's not a business, hire a business manager that takes care of it all, and go, you have to go through Dawn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one. I mean, if you were gonna try to like step away from this, I think you do have to figure out a way to set up a trust.
Right.
And then technically you would be washing your hands of it, but you wouldn't be doing the thing your father actually didn't want, which is just turn the money over to him.
Right.
Now, like, there's a lot of arguments though about, you know, is that protecting your mother or controlling your mother after his death?
Right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes that depends, and people can have very different opinions.
Right.
But I do think that, like, finding a way to make this more of a peer-based, non-family, like, honor your father's wishes, don't hand her the money.
Right.
Get yourself out of it.
Right.
Do it in a way that makes more sense.
Right.
Like, I think that's your solution ultimately. Otherwise, yeah, this is all you're going to talk about till the day she dies.
Right.
And that sucks.
Yes.
Like,
very much so.
All right, so poll up.
Poll is up. Your choices are: yes, you are an asshole for withholding funds from your mother. No, you're not an asshole for following your father's wishes. Everyone is shitty here, especially your mother. Or, damn, you're in a dill pickle. Call a lawyer.
There you go. All right, so moving on to relationship advice. Husband, 33 male, thinks my 34 female need for verbal affirmation is, quote, self-serving and greedy. Feeling extremely invalidated. Is this a hill to die on? I, 34 female, am married to my husband, 33 male, known each other for 10 years. We had some communication issues since the beginning, especially since I feel loved when my partner tells me I am beautiful or a simple I love you randomly. He was never like this, but he made efforts for me, and I always let him know how much his efforts mean to me. However, he stopped putting in efforts in verbal affirmations a few years into our marriage. So I recently had a discussion with my husband about the love languages and how we express and receive love differently. I shared with him, again, that words of affirmation make me feel loved and appreciated. Instead of acknowledging my feelings, he lectured me about how people often misunderstand the concept of love languages. He said that the real intention of the love languages concept is for you to recognize and appreciate the ways your partner is already showing you love, even if it's not in your preferred format, and accused that I was butthurt because he wasn't doing it my way. He told me to manage my expectations and stop getting upset because he doesn't give me the verbal praise I crave. He insisted that I should just appreciate his acts of service and implied that my need for words of affirmation is something I need to get over. His response left me feeling belittled and dismissed. It seemed like he was telling me that my feelings and needs were invalid and that I was being unreasonable. I do appreciate the thoughtful things he does for me, but his tone made it feel like my desire for verbal affirmations was something I had to ignore. What really made me mad with rage is that he implied that my expectations to want love in my preferred language is self-serving, greedy, unappreciative. And by talking about how others agree with me, I showed him a Reddit post about this. Wrong move, I know. I was patting myself on the back. How do I address this with him without escalating into an argument? Has anyone else dealt with similar issues in their relationship? How do I get through to him when he and I fundamentally disagree? He was never like this before, but now he has been digging in his heels about this, and he would not respond the way that makes things easier for us. We even tried couples counseling, but he has his way of thinking, and I have mine. We didn't go very far with this. Is this a hill to die on, or let this go?
See, they're really young to be on this hill.
I mean, I don't think anyone's young to be on this hill. I think it's fundamental incompatibility. Like, it's already enough of a problem if two people in a relationship are not hitting each other's love language buttons.
Right.
And that can sometimes be a real struggle to get on the right page about. That, like, my thought is, if I go do this thing, I'm going to be showing my love and appreciation. All I really needed to do was be like, wow, honey, you look amazing today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And, like, trying to make that connection that, like, yeah, go ahead and go put gas in the car and make sure their day's all set, because that scratches an itch in you.
Mm-hmm.
And then remember, you've got to follow that up with, oh, honey, you look amazing today. I really, really love you.
Right. But see, here's the thing.
And it's a struggle.
Well, not only is it a struggle, but it's not an all or nothing on all of it. See, this is what people, like, I don't think they actually do research into this. Okay. Example. Mine is physical touch and words of affirmation. Yours is acts of service. Those all commingle very well with each other.
They can, but sometimes, like, you do get people that are very geared towards one.
Uh-huh.
And, like, if a partner is not really seeing that, like, they're kind of blind to it, and they're not getting the one that, like, that's it, that's the button, press the button.
Right.
It can be like, oh my God, you don't love me, you don't care about me, you don't do any of the things I, need to feel love.
Right.
And I think that can be legitimate.
Right.
Some of them do overlap at times.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, she needs words of affirmation. He's doing his acts of service. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have a words of affirmation button.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that she doesn't have an acts of service button, or a touch button, or a gift button.
Right.
It's just her words of affirmations button is the big red one that hasn't been pushed in a while.
Mm-hmm. Push the big red button. Everyone wants to push the big red button. Push the big red button.
And that's all they see is the big red button. They don't see the other parts of the combination.
Right. Well, and that is true too. Well, and especially when that button's not getting pressed.
Right.
Like it's kind of like you're hitting all the other buttons, and that's nice. I need you to hit the big red button.
Right.
Just every once in a while.
Right.
Smack the big red button.
Right.
It makes the other ones light up.
Right. But I don't think that either one of them has done more than the online website version of love languages.
Yeah. Well, and that's sometimes also a problem with this is like they hear about it, like people will hear about it. They don't really invest in getting to know about it.
Right.
And like, you know, you can make all this work together.
Right.
Or you can fight out the argument that, you know, this is mine. You're going to keep pressing the big red button or we're going to end it.
Exactly. But see, what I'm seeing happen here is that dude, like I'm questioning dude. Yeah. All right, it's easier to tell you you're pretty than to get up an hour and a half early, make you breakfast, set it on the table for you, pack your lunch, and get your clothes together.
And that doesn't necessarily always make me happy.
Not saying it makes you happy. What I'm saying, though, is dude is being handed the easy button.
It is. See, I think that's also a misconception, is that for some people the buttons are easier. Now, I think it's easier if that's who you are and like you can genuinely do that. I think words of affirmation can actually sometimes be the hardest one. Because it sounds simple. Just tell me I'm fucking pretty, okay? Is how it always comes out. Like, you know, just tell me I'm pretty. Tell me you love me. Is kind of the argumentative version of it. That's how, you know, like, that's all I want. The reality is, like, you can train your partner to say this. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to go a little further down the road, and it's not going to feel genuine anymore because, they're like, you've trained them like a dog. Do the trick, get the treat.
Right.
And eventually it's going to come to the point that doesn't do it for you anymore. Because it doesn't feel honest. It doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel like, it just feels like a programmed response.
Right. But
like,
what I'm saying,
you walk down the stairs, you get to the third to the last stair. Oh, honey, you look really pretty today. Like, that's basically what happens.
But no, it's even like, it's not even that complicated. It's easy for the people that want words of affirmation. It's more work for them. What I mean by that is you've got to, either put together a new outfit, put yourself together someplace to get attention, get a new haircut, do something different to get that genuine attention. Versus like person of acts of service or a person whose main one is gifts. That's work. Because you can only buy so many gifts.
Yeah, the gift one can get, well, again, it kind of like, I think the bigger problem comes in is like people get really hung up on this whole like love language thing. And they try to like gamify their relationships.
Right.
And it's like collect all the rings, sort of like Sonic the Hedgehog, or, something, hit all the question mark boxes. And it's like, that's not exactly how that works.
Exactly.
Like, don't gamify your relationship. It's not gonna go well.
Right.
Because again, you lose the genuine intent. And it starts to feel like, if any of you have seen Death Becomes Her. In the opening portion of the movie, Madeline Ashton, the actress character, is talking to the maid, And she says, "Aren't you forgetting something?" And she said, "You only told me to say that," and I forget what, the condition is. And so the actress says, "No, I think I need you to say it every morning." And so the maid, without skipping a beat, goes, "Oh, madam, you look younger every day."
Uh-huh.
And it's like, yeah, that's going to get old quick. Like the
Exactly.
level of
And it
shallow you've got to be.
Right. But that's what I'm saying, though, is she is harping on one love language.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she's not one love language.
No, that's just her primary.
That's her primary. There are secondaries. Now, acts of service may be the last one on her list.
Yeah, that could be a real problem in this relationship if it is.
Right. So my advice is this: you need to research it, and then you need to practice it. Like if your love language is words of affirmation, then you need to be using it.
Now, I think the bigger problem here is I don't think OP is going to have a problem with that. Like they would take this advice and be like, okay, that's fair.
Right.
Like maybe I'm not getting this right. Maybe we're both wrong. Right. And there's more to this than what I thought there was. Right. And that's fundamentally what we're saying if OP were to watch this is both of you have a point, both of you are right, and both of you are wrong.
Right.
Is fundamentally what we're saying.
Right.
Is there's a misunderstanding here of like how this works.
Right.
So but what I think the struggle is going to be is I think OP, can calm down and be like, let me go learn more.
Right.
Let me go learn more.
Right. Especially since he's saying that she's not understanding love languages. All right, then dig it backwards. I don't understand, something Joe's trying to explain to me. I will be an expert at it in about 2 months. And then I'll go back to him and say, you're still wrong.
Yeah, not always the best thing in your relationship, side note. Like going out to prove your partner wrong is probably a bad idea.
Right.
But
I've learned so much because most of the times he's right. That's not my point. I
was gonna say, like, if you're just learning things just to be like, no, you're wrong, it's like, oh, honey, wow. Like I'm not familiar with the sensation of being wrong. Little Downton Abbey reference there. But no, I'm wrong about things fairly, not all the time, but like I have my moments. But no, I think sometimes it's figuring out how, and I think this is the bigger portion of this one perhaps, is now that they've hit this lockhead, like, locked horns moment. How do you de-escalate both of them to a point where they can go learn together?
Right.
And that's what really needs to happen. Because I'm thinking she's a little pissed and would not take this advice well in the beginning, but I think it would plant a seed.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's totally locked in, is like, I know this.
Right.
And it's like, you're also wrong.
Yeah, because neither one of you know this.
Because the funny part is together, you almost got it.
Right.
You almost got it. Between the two of you, you almost got it.
Right.
Like you're just, like, there's some missing pieces that make it all,
right.
Like the half she understands and the half you understand.
Right.
Almost fit together.
Right.
It's just you have some overlaps and combined deficits. And if you fill those in and get it all together, I think you'll do great. Right. The problem is he seems really entrenched in, you're wrong, I'm right, fuck off.
Prove me.
I don't even know that it's prove me. I think he's just like, shut it down.
Right.
Like, I'm done. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm not going to listen.
Right. And, that's when it's like love languages books. And I don't know. Let me just Amazon. There's the 5 Love Languages book that came out by Greg Champion. Then you have 5 Languages, The Secrets to Love and Lasting new edition that came out by the Christian Bookstore. There's about, let's just go to the site. Oh, there's quizzes. I don't know. Do you want to take a quiz tonight, dear? Oh, God. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books and 3 webinars I'm quite sure this man has not read.
I mean, possibly. Yeah. Very likely. I mean, to have the misunderstandings that he has.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah. Again, I think the bigger part of it is he seems intractable. Like he's just dug in.
Right.
And I think it's going to be unfortunate if y'all break up over this.
Right.
Which is kind of where Brenda's at. Is her relationship worth dumping over this?
Right.
If she's willing to die on this hill, there may be more problems.
Right. But also, what is her apologetic language? What is her anger language? Because it sounds to me like her anger language is, you're wrong, I'm right.
I mean, but that sounds more like his. You're wrong, I'm right.
No, but that's just it. It starts with love languages, then it moves to apology languages, and how well you handle anger, and then how you feel appreciated. Like these are all different avenues of languages. Here's an example. Joe has probably about a 25% gift receiver language, but not his apologetic language. His love language and his apology. Like I go buy you a gift to say I'm sorry, that ain't gonna cut it. Oh, he's frozen.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably going to make it worse.
Exactly.
And there's very specific reasons for that. It's like, don't get me wrong, I do love a gift, but trying to apologize to me with one is like, that's a really cute way to watch something very expensive fly at you.
Right.
Because it's like, I don't need the gift.
Right.
So I'm not for sale. You're not going to buy your way out of this.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is love languages is the tip of the berg to all these other pieces that feed into that love language.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So neither one of them are right. Neither one of them are wrong. Both of them needs to go do more research. Yes.
So no, I guess not a hill to die on. I guess is the final verdict here is this is not a hill to die on. I don't think you let it go either.
Right.
I
think if you want him to do words of affirmation, then you've got to give him words of affirmation.
Oh yeah, Brenda's in the same boat. My family bought gifts instead of apologizing or admitting they were wrong. So buying me one when I'm mad will just anger me further. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's flat banned from technically, he got an exception recently because it was really cute and sweet. But as my general blanket statement is, you do not ever buy me roses.
No. That is not your blanket statement.
Okay.
Your blanket statement is, do not buy me grocery store roses.
Yeah, no grocery store roses, no gas station roses. I like roses, as a flower.
Mm-hmm.
I don't typically appreciate getting them as gifts. One, I have a different favorite flower. But two, that's not always the best way to go about it with me. Is you can make a good day bad real quick. You got to be careful. Play carefully with that. But the other day, well, this has been a couple of weeks ago. We were out and someone was actually roadside selling. And I found it very cute. There's a single little red rose behind me that is about dead now, but it's very cute. It was very sweet. I very much enjoyed. But yeah. Oh, Brenda, I can understand. Mine is don't buy me carnations. Those are funeral flowers.
Yeah.
Did anyone not think about this before they started stocking fucking gas stations with carnations? Because I remember that period. There was a period you couldn't go in a gas station. It was like roses died. Like you couldn't, like you might find like one rose. But then they had like shit tons of carnations. Did it really take like 5 6 years before someone got the clue these are fucking funeral flowers? Like they're not really love flowers. Like one, they're cheap. They're really cheap. And two, like these basically end up making your home smell like a funeral parlor.
Right, but you know
that's the smell.
Flowers in their own self is their own languages. But no, I don't buy you gas station flowers. I don't buy you Walmart flowers. I either pick you flowers or something in the universe puts flowers in my way. And I'm sorry, a lady selling roses by the side of the road, and I looked at her energy signature and went, "Rom," and went, "Turn around."
No, I'm good with it. Like this is the thing. I had a moment like, did he just seriously buy me roses? And I'm okay with it. Because I was like, that's different. Like, I don't know. I had a whole moment. I had to process that because like on a blanket level statement, I was like, you just played with fire and you won, but you played with fire and this could have ended really badly. But it worked out. It was good. It was a situation I had not considered, that I'm actually okay with. And I didn't realize that about myself. But no, the biggest ones, it turns out my biggest problem is like the apologetic roses of last resort in the middle of the night situation. Or the like, I'm buying you flowers because it's a thing that I'm supposed to do, but I'm not actually going to make the effort to deal with a florist and spend florist money. I'm just going to go to Walmart and pick through what's left for whatever event this is, that has caused me to realize guilt flowers are bad. Guilt flowers are bad. You can get hurt with those. They can be wielded like a baseball bat. I know this. Like, there have been people before him that made mistakes. It's like, no, apology flowers are bad. I react horribly to apology flowers.
But, you know, going and picking flowers, calling up my florist and having a deep conversation about exactly what I want in that bouquet, how I want that bouquet to look, what vase I want that bouquet in, because I'm sorry, Teleflor, you're sucking on your vase game. I've seen them. They suck.
Yeah. Well, but then again, for me, I don't need this to be a highly expensive thing. Like, I work from home. Like, how many people am I going to show off in front of? But like, my favorite, like, okay, go ahead. We'll just out myself on this one. My favorite flower is literally a ditch lily. Okay? It is also known as a tiger lily. I really do like it. It is absolutely beautiful, and we have them planted in the yard. Like, if he feels he needs to do an apology flower, he can just go cut some in the yard. For a portion of the year. But otherwise, it is like, that's really not going to get you, like, that's going to grease a little, but it's not going to get you very far. Like, that's a squirt of WD-40 in my general direction. You better have better than this to go with it. You know what I mean?
You're even in worse trouble.
Okay.
What's my favorite flower?
Why'd my brain just freeze?
It's what you can only get through a florist.
Oh, hell. As a side note, we don't do a lot of flowers. This is just like a go-to example. I'm so sorry, but in this moment, I'm drawing total blank.
Well, Brenda is done your call dial a friend.
Oh, Black Rose. Okay, because Rose was in my head, and I'm like, that's not it.
No, it's the Virginia Black Rose.
Virginia Blacks, yes.
Yes.
Like, sorry, if I were actually going to a florist, I'd be fine. We were on a totally different train of thought. Connected, but different train of thought. My brain froze.
Right.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
No, it isn't. Like, I'm sorry. Okay. Clear the air. I worked in owned a floral shop for a period of time. I know them all. I know everything from a chrysanthemum all the way up to a dragon lily, which is gorgeous, but fucking hard to get. So for me, roses have a language. You know, a difference from a Lincoln like I got you versus a Kennedy versus a Virginia white rose versus a long stem black rose versus, you know, the Virginia black rose, which is an ultra rare. You can only get it like 3 months out of the year. None of them are during the months he needs it.
Like not getting it for his birthday or for Valentine's Day or
No, they only bloom, and we can only get them in the state of West Virginia from August until December. Anything else
we
are
have
died.
only one event during that.
Yeah.
Only one.
Yeah.
But no, in general, we don't do a lot of flowers like we did earlier on.
Yeah.
We've kind of settled into that it's not a lot of flowers. And I'm okay with that. Like, it's not a complaint. I'm just saying. Like, but typically easier for him and makes more sense and makes him happier is about as bad as watching the Darcy and Jer channel on TikTok. Is just turn him loose at the dead plants stand at Lowe's. He'll be fine.
Right.
Like, he'll be fine. Just tell him to buy whatever he wants off the dead plant stand. One, it's going to come home and there's like a 95% chance it lives and flourishes. But even if it doesn't, he is bought in quantity.
Yeah.
Like, he is bought in quantity because he cannot pass a dead plant stand. You know, when they put them on clearance and it's just this like 2 little leaves, like it's brown and like, you know, he buys those, he brings them home, 95% go on and flourish.
Yeah.
Like, but he will buy all of them.
Mm-hmm.
All of them.
Yeah, I will buy what I need to fill in my yard. I do not like annuals. I prefer perennials.
Oh, bless your heart! You think you buy enough to fill in your yard? If by that you mean you want to cover every square inch of this yard in plants?
Yes.
Yeah, he feels bad for them too. The annoying part is they live.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel bad for the dead plant shelf too, but when I buy one, it dies. But I know I gave it a valiant effort.
Uh-huh.
He buys the shelf, and 95% of these plants will live.
Uh-huh. I bought 6 shrubs, and 4 of them have survived. All of them look dead. My Japanese maple, my English pink tea rose, we bought my Black Knights from Sam's. We should bloom this year. I'm hoping it does. Like, that's going to be a gorgeous flower.
If we can keep the lawn guys out of them.
Yes.
Like, I swear to God, one way or another, we are getting the pea gravel to go beside the sidewalk. Because what happens is, just as like, they've done better this year. We finally have them trained.
Yeah.
But what kept happening is that first mow would be occurring right as, like, the grass and the start of the plant were about the same height.
Right.
And so before we could catch them, they had already gone through with either a mower or a weed whacker and just leveled it. And it was like, there's flowers on the sides of the sidewalk.
Yes.
Like, don't do it. And it was so sad one year, they just kept doing it. Like, those poor lilies didn't stand a chance. I think this is only the second time since we've had them, the lilies made it to bloom.
Right.
And, like, I was just, like, shocked.
Yeah.
Oh, to made it. Because, dude, that was the problem, though, is because, like, the grass and the weeds and, you know, everything, because it was right at that first mow point where it's like, okay, no, really, the grass is growing. We have to mow it. And every year we just, like, you couldn't see enough to see the like, where they were and everything. And so we didn't blame them. It was just like, careful, guys, careful.
Yeah.
Easy on the first mow.
Like, Dave has been amazing this year. Like, he finally got one of my lilies, and I'm like, oh, thank you for picking my lily for me. And he was just confused, and I just picked it up, brought it in, put it in a vase. Yeah. But no, they've done amazing this year. I've been so happy. But yeah, no, we have a little row of baby pine trees in front of the house because they're now trees. Because when he brought them home, y'all, Charlie Brown Christmas tree was like flourishing compared to these dead twigs in bundles that he brought home. Yeah, and you looked at me and I was like, I'm planting shrubs. Just give me a minute.
I'm like, you're planting sticks.
Because
it was like Lowe's never watered these once.
Right.
There's no way these things had a drop of water since they had come off the truck.
I know. This Christmas, we may actually have to buy freaking lights for them.
Little lights. Well, now let's not get ahead of ourselves. I still think they're at that point where, like, one big Christmas ornament could tip them. Like, they're almost there. Like, next Christmas, we could put ornaments on it. This year, one big ornament, and they're going to leave it.
Well, next Christmas, I'm hoping, because this will be their third year, the fourth and fifth year should be their most growth. So I'm hoping by then they're big enough to actually scare the neighbors.
Aw, Brenda says dead bonsai fig is now 3.5 foot tall and beautiful. Aw.
Yes.
No, I kill plants. Plants die on me. I kill things you shouldn't be able to kill.
Now, you grow, mint.
That's because that is the most, but that was the irony. It is the most indestructible plant to me. I can't kill it. He tried to care for it and killed it.
I did.
It died.
Yeah.
He's like, I think I killed your mint. And I said, there's no possible way. It's the most Ronco plant ever. Just throw some water at it once in a while or let it rain and it'll grow. It doesn't give a shit. Like, chocolate mint, most wonderful plant, can't kill it. He killed it. Two of them. Because we tried again and killed the second one. And I'm like, no one else can do this. Like, maybe we should turn you loose on the bonsai plants in West Virginia and see if we can eradicate them. Like, because you'll go out there and care for them until they die.
But anyhow, all right.
Okay.
So we had some comments we didn't read about Are You the Asshole?
Kudzu.
Let's read
Kudzu.
those.
I think I said
Kudzu.
Yes. All right. I'm sorry. You were saying, though, I just wanted to correct that.
Are you an asshole? We had some comments on it.
Oh, yes, we did. We did. So yes, so dad's money equals dad decides what should be done with it. OP is not taking it from her. He's using it for her. He is. And that's the good part. It's also the hard part.
Right.
If OP gives her the money, it needs to be with telling her, if you use it all, I will not be funding you or paying your bills.
Yep. All right.
I mean, those are fair. Those are fair.
Yeah.
All right. So where'd that poll come in at?
Well, that poll came in at where I'd expect it to come in at. No, you are not the asshole for withholding your funds that you were entrusted for your mother's care. So did you finish TC?
Oh, God, no. I haven't. Oh, Jesus Christ. I made it in one night, y'all. In one night. I did make it to, like, I don't know, maybe part 30 before I crashed out.
Okay.
But I didn't actually put my earpiece back in the case. And I thought I paused it, but apparently I dreamt that part. So I woke up this morning and it had like stopped itself on part 41.
Okay. So back up to 30 and finish, because we'll talk about that. And then not knowing that you're married to a serial killer. We'll talk about that on Mountain Bears too, because there's 9 parts of that one.
Oh yeah, that one's not as bad. That's an hour and a half of your life. If that. It's not even.
If that. But I thought we would talk about them. All right, guys. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We will be back with Mountain Bears at 9 p.m. on Friday.
We will. And so, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Joan Owen, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Van, Caitlin Bell, and Devin. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yep. Sorry, guys. My mouse got stuck.
It wasn't that I didn't know what to say. It was just like, what are you doing?
All right, guys. We'll see you later. Bye, y'all.
Bye.